Can we record?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I thought you were.
So can you, okay, got it. All right, now it says it's recording, so we're good. Sorry. Okay,
All right,
go on.
yeah, fantastic. Um, so there's a handbook that goes into step-by-step the process for scheduling an exam, how to submit it to the service center in Chicago for processing, and even registering for the website. We are working on additional materials to go along with that because it still can be confusing and it's a lot to take in. So we're including step-by-steps along with screenshots, and that's a project that is coming out bit by bit. So as we finish a large subject, we release it to the state coordinators for them to share with you guys. Something that you may or may not have noticed with the exams is that there's also the ability to test in Spanish. So that's something that you could just denote here. And so if I was to, I'm just going to schedule one as an example. And you'll indicate your school. I'm just going to do one and so you can pick the date. You can also change the date at a later time. So if you wanted to schedule it at the start of the year so that you had access to the exam booklet, then that's fine, and you could just change it at a later date. So this is the confirmation page that you're going to get when you have set your exam. Here you can see that there's the Spanish version of the book, of the exam, along with the English version. For print, it allows you to do them all at once in one exam session. If you're doing online exams, then you would have to schedule separate exam sessions for a Spanish batch and an English batch. And then these don't look like links, so they're very easy to miss. But this is also the exam information form that goes along with the answer sheets that you're turning in for grading. That's how the Service Center knows to tie those student records to your particular class instead of getting lost in the gaping black hole that can be the Service Center, because they also grade ServSafe and Manage First and a plethora of other exams. So that's how you do it. And then something like if you were to forget to print the exam information form or need to re-download anything, that's very easily. You can get back to the exam materials. You find the exam session date needed and go to exam materials, and you can get right back to this this page. And then I got permission from a friend of mine to access her records so that she can we can show you what the COA looks like with students. I can show what the exam scheduling looks like, but since I don't actually test students, my COA manager is empty. So a few handy tricks for using the COA manager is that the month is automatically set to end in June. I always update that to December just to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. And then you can look year by year. So even if you first got your student or if your student is graduating this year, their records may be in 2016 or 15 if that's when they first tested. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. So you can search with this empty, and then you'll be able to find all of the records associated with within the 2015 year. Approved COAs, anything that's in progress. So if you see that you have a batch of students that haven't gotten anything started, you can go ahead and remind them. If some students are approaching the expiration date, then that's something that you can keep an eye on as well. But that's basically how you would navigate that. So when you're using the filter, I always err on the side of keeping it open just so that nothing, again, slips through the cracks, because if you are over specific in typing a student's name, like Matthew, but they tested under a nickname or there's a typo on their name, because that happens a lot too, then you may not be able to find the student's record just because of some type of slight misalignment. Okay, so, and this is also where your students will go to for whether if they take an online exam, so they can have their own resources here. Oh, I'm logged in, so that is, I haven't tested, but oh, they've updated the website. Okay, let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so any questions about the website in general? Basically, I would just say play around with it, and my best piece of advice for the website is each start of the school year, just log in, make sure that everything is working properly, that you have access to the exams that you need. I'll be honest, the website has its issues, and so sometimes they do updates even without telling us. So I always just say at the start of the school year and a few weeks before you actually need to test, log on, make sure that everything looks proper on your end. If your students have login information for their online exam or just managing their COA, have them do it in advance too. The end of the school year is peak testing time, and things can get crazy. So, you know, if you have to get assistance from the Service Center or from the ProStart team here in DC, then it's a lot easier when things are calmer. So did we have any questions about the website?
How are we doing, everybody's website? Okay, we're good. Thanks, Crystal.
Good? Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
So the data collection, if you hear us referring to the WestDat data collection, that's something that happens every start of the school year. And as I mentioned before, it is our way of renewing schools' status and making sure that they are following the standards of a ProStart school. So for this year, it's going to start September 1st for the coordinators. So on your guys' end, that's not something that as educators that you need to worry about. However, when the data collection closes for coordinators, it's going to be released to you guys as educators. So basically what happens is your state coordinator is going to identify all of the active schools for the 2017-2018 school year. And so they're going to say, you know, they're going to identify your school, identify the educators that are associated. So you really want to make sure that you have an eye out for, I guess, whoever Stacy's replacement is, who will be notifying you that it's time for data collection. The data collection officially starts October 1st for you guys as educators to provide the information, basically indicating that you're following the standards, so you're using the proper textbooks, that you are partnering with industry, things of that nature. There's an asterisk there just because if the coordinator finishes their data collection before the September 30th deadline, then it would go to the educators before. So as soon as the coordinator finishes, it goes to the educator. So September 30th is really just the very cutoff that it could be. And the process is not complicated. It really only takes a few minutes. So we encourage the educators mentally note October 31st as the deadline, just in case there's any issues. If your school system is sensitive with security, so it's not getting the emails from Westat. That's something else that you want to probably do, is put Westat as a safe email contact for you guys, so it's on the whitelist. Because November 15th is the absolute cutoff for this school year's data collection. That is important because it has a direct impact on your status. So if you don't complete it, the data collection, or if you complete it but you basically indicate that you're not following the standards, that you don't use the textbooks that are associated with the program, things of that nature, then that tells us that you're not a ProStar school, at least this year. So in effect, you lose your ability to award COAs. You can't compete in the national invitational. As an educator, you're not eligible to be an educator of excellence at the national level. So that's just a few of the things that can happen as a result. It should be noted that if for some reason you were deactivated, but a student was still interested in pursuing the Certificate of Achievement, there are ways that we work to not punish the student for something that's completely out of their control. So on a case-by-case basis, basically, we just handle each individual student that is in that kind of precarious situation. So we temporarily activate them, and then they have 2 weeks to complete whatever requirements online. It's obviously not ideal, and it's a bit laborious. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But that's just why we stress the urgency for the data collection.
And Crystal, up to 3 years after a student graduates, they're eligible for the COA still?
Yeah, well, it's unique to each student, so we'll get into that as well. But from the date that they pass their first exam is they have 3 years after that. So I actually have a visual to help explain that. So that leads me into the Certificate of Achievement. The online system, basically, it was intended to put more onus on the students to be able to earn their own certificate. So before, there was a paper workplace validation form, I believe it was called. At any rate, it was basically on the educator to input the students' information, collect all their documentation. The student wasn't really too involved in the process. So online issues and technical glitches aside, I do think that this is a benefit, just because it's a student-earned certificate, and the old way allowed for the student to fall through the cracks. Myself as an example, I worked level 1, level 2, I worked my 400 hours in the industry. I filled out the workplace validation form, but my teacher never turned in the form to the restaurant association. So I was under the impression that I had done everything that I needed to and that I had earned the COA, but in reality, he actually didn't turn in the exams or the validation form that I was working towards. So this process allows for the student to be aware each step of their status as they work towards a COA. So the student has to register the same way that the educator does. That's why the educator, when they register for access, they have the secondary step of completing the specific categories that I showed you before. So as I mentioned, if you have a SerSafe account, go ahead and use that so you don't have to have multiple usernames and passwords floating around. That's just the registration page. Oh, really encourage your students to use their legal name as it shows on the driver's license consistently. So from the registration to when they take the level 1 exam and the level 2 exam, that's going to help the system to recognize that it's the same student all the way through. Otherwise, the system errs on the side of caution and assumes that it's a completely different person, and then we need to involve either the national team or the service center to help to sync up these accounts and fix the error. So that's just going to save you and the students and everyone some headache. So as I mentioned, the students need to register on the website. They can do that at any point. So before they've even taken their first exam, they can register just so that they're familiar with the website, and that as soon as they take their first exam, it'll sync up to their account. So this is the page where the student can climb their certificate of achievement. The tracker is right here. And they can also find it through the exams page. So this is an example of what a student's COA tracker looks like. As they complete the requirements, they can input their information. They don't need to wait until the end to do all this. They can do this throughout their process. So that way it's not a last-minute dash to get everything done and to deal with any glitches that they may encounter. So here's what I wanted to show you that helps to explain. So if the student takes their level 1 exam first, and they took it Cinco de Mayo 2017. So they have 3 years to complete any of the requirements that's left. They also can backlog any work hours a year prior. So they really have 4 years of eligible time to work on their 400 hours, their competency checklists, and to get that done. Does that help to explain? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so that's why I say that each student's expiration date can be unique. So theoretically, if a student were to take both the level 1 exam their last day of school, they would still have another 3 years to complete the requirements. But again, like that also means that their start time is like junior, they're basically their senior year. So that's just something to take into consideration. As far as the competency checklists and work hours, common question is what type of experience can count, and can I approve competencies? If it's industry work experience, paid or volunteer, like they're working at a soup kitchen, basically that they're going out and finding a job on their own, that's the clear-cut and obvious example of what is an appropriate type of workplace experience. Many schools have the opportunity to, like, either they have a school-based enterprise, or they have just odd jobs here and there. So maybe they cater for the principal's meeting before school, or help out with the football fundraiser after school. As long as it's not class time, it can count, and you as the educator, as long as you act as a supervisor in this type of example. But otherwise, typical class time that they would be doing, whether or not they were working towards a COA, does not count. So it basically has to show above and beyond that they're working towards this. Does that make sense? Okay. So the competency checklist, it says pending educator approval, but really the educator is the one person in this COA process that does not really have to be involved at all. So let's say that a student didn't complete their requirements during the school year, and so they're working on finishing anything up during the summer. They don't need to be in contact with you and bothering your summer break if they have anything that they need to turn in, or if their competency checklist is still pending. The coordinator also has access to approve those competencies. So hopefully that provides some relief that, you know, they would be able to do that, you know, with or without you. Again, putting more emphasis on the student earning their own certificate. So once the student has reached the 3 checkmark stage, basically all that's left is for the student to submit their documentation. So whether it's pay stubs or a volunteer log sheet, a letter, you know, summarizing from their employer, they need to have that documentation for any of the work hours that they are claiming. And then that in addition to the competency checklist. Okay, so a few common errors that that your students may run into is, as I mentioned before, in a perfect world, if the student, you know, matched up their name from registration to the exam, it should sync up automatically. However, I think we all know that the website does not work properly most of the time. So if a student took an exam, but they're not seeing it on their check scores page or their COA tracker, they can go here. I'll see if it lets me in. So they can go. This is found from this link. So the exams and certificates takes them to this page. So they can go to check scores. Let me log in again. So if I'm a student and I see that I don't have any exam scores, but I know that I took the exam, what I can do is enter the exam session for whatever is missing. I really recommend not entering anything else for the certificate number or exam date, because I find that it tends to do more damage than good. So you enter the exam session number and click Find Record, and it'll automatically pop up here. From there, it may take maybe 4 or 5 minutes to activate their COA tracker if it's their first exam that they are connecting. But that is the handy way that students can connect to their own exams. Otherwise, if they try that and it doesn't work, the likely problem is that there's some type of variance in the name that they entered, and in that case, you're going to want to contact your state coordinator. They'll work with me to help to get the service center to fix that up. And that's basically what this explains. Now, Stacy has this PowerPoint as well, so she'll be able to share it with you. So you guys as educators, your responsibility is to, even if you don't test all your students, promote the opportunity to test so that the students have the opportunity to work towards their certificate of achievement. And then help to provide documentation to the coordinator. But again, like if you're on summer break, the student has the ability to look up the state coordinator's contact information and connect with them directly. I do indicate here that entering student hours is not included in your responsibilities. I know a lot of teachers do it because they worry that their students aren't going to do it on their own, and it's entirely a factor that that you guys deal with. But if you're doing it for potentially 90 students at the end of the year, then you know, it's a lot for you guys to deal with. So we highly encourage the students to be responsible for entering their own hours. Additionally, although your educator access does have the ability to enter hours, the system wasn't designed to allow that. So sometimes if teachers do that, they'll enter hours and then it'll disappear. And so they may spend time entering all those hours on behalf of the student, but the only way to make sure that those hours stay for sure is for the student's account to be the one entering it. So I showed you before how to get to the Manage COA page, and this is what it looks like as well. We touched on this. Competency checklist, and this is also available for download in case students need to submit multiple. The sheet has 3 columns, and let me see if I can find that as well. Those 3 columns are to allow for the student to have multiple supervisors checking on the same sheet. You know, our little attempt to be a little green. Spacing on where to find that, but Stacy should have that, right?
Right, we have it.
Okay.
I'll show it right afterwards.
Yeah, we will keep it moving because I know we started a little late then. Okay, so submitting documentation. Okay, this is rare, more like less common now, but if you, because the conversion to this online system revealed some inconsistencies. So we did find that some of the educators that had access to exams and were turning in workplace validation forms when this online system happened, they no longer had access to the COAs. And it turns out that these educators have registered as foundations only educators and not ProStart educators. So that's a quick fix, but it's not something that the system caught until this update that happened a few years ago. Additionally, the Approved Competency button. As soon as the student has completed both of the exams and their 400-hour requirement, the Approved Competency button should automatically appear. However, if it doesn't, there is a way to basically kickstart the system and remind it that it's got something waiting for it. So I'm not going to log into a student's account, but you could go to the work experience and hours to find whatever log entry. If they have multiple, it can just be one of them. But you select a work experience entry, click edit, and then you don't need to change anything. You just click edit, click save, and then it's going to make the approved competency button pop up. And that's just a weird thing that we found with this new system, but it works every time.
Crystal, can you go back right there? Back another one. Most common educator problem.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. So the access denied, I feel like a lot of you have seen that before. So it really is, just keep a mental note of that it's the foundations, you want to be a post-start educator versus a foundations editor or teacher,
right,
rather, when you're registering.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
And you only need to register once, so you don't need to do that registration every year. It's only the data collection that's every year. The only reason why at this point, if you are a pro-start educator and so you've had that status before, but you no longer get it, no longer have it, and you get access denied, would be because of it would be because of the data collection, and basically your status for the year indicated that you are inactive or not currently participating in the full capacity. Does that make sense?
Crystal, let me just interrupt one second. So what that means is if you don't fill out the data collection that will be sent out, then you get bumped out of the process. So you want to make sure it's really important. It's really important. I know a lot of people did last year. Okay, sorry. That was it. Going.
Hello?
Crystal, you all set?
Yep. Okay. So on the part of the coordinator, I mean, they are the final end road to this approval process. So if you encounter any obstacles or errors along the application process, they're going to be your first contact to reach out for help and to involve NRAEF in helping to get it cleared up so that you can get this going. So they get an automated email from the service center indicating that they have a student ready. They can also check on their COA manager portal to see if there's anything that's in progress. After the state coordinator clicks final approval, the student automatically has the ability to download a digital certificate. So if they are in a hurry and need to get the proof that they earned the COA to admission officer for scholarship or something along those lines, then they could download a PDF version of the certificate and have it sent directly to whoever needs it. A hard copy is also sent to the student's address on file. That's the address that they entered when they first registered. The COA tracker allows for them to update their address, so I always encourage students when they were submitting documentation, make sure that your address is current and up to date before I click final approval, because the system will automatically send it to whatever address is there. I usually did it when I saw the address and I noticed an obvious error, but it's just a good habit for it to go to. Some students also put the school as their address, so that's something of note as well. If they have the school as the address, it's going to be going to you guys instead. And then if you guys have a need to have copies as the educator, because you guys don't automatically get the e-certificates the way that you get the certificate of recognition for the level 1 and level 2 exam, you can notify your state coordinator, who will reach out to me, and you send me just a roster of whatever you need, and I can get that sent your way. So this is just a note to help explain why it's important to submit the proper documentation for the students. Your state coordinator is obligated to be diligent about the record keeping, just because there may be random audits to help ensure the validity of the COA. And so that for 5 years, the SRAs or state restaurant associations have to keep approved COA documentation on file. Any questions about the COA process before we move along? I'll take that as a no. Okay, so the summer institutes are offered, I think we're running a little over, but I'll be quick. So the summer institutes are offered by the NRAEF. Some state restaurant associations offer their own professional development, but this is basically to help to meet the needs of educators. Some educators come from a predominantly industry background, some come from predominantly education background, so you know, this covers both of those needs. There are 4 levels, and the locations and dates are negotiated through contracts each year. So this is what we had for 2017, but it likely be different for 2018, just to give you an idea. The level 4, we call it a spotlight series, and it's really, there's no final exam, it's all fun. There's usually some type of focus, like you know, baking or chocolatier work, or you know, things, you know, each location gets to pick whatever they want to focus in on. So if you are interested in Summer Institute sessions for 2018, as I mentioned before, we have to negotiate with the post-secondary schools because they are the hosts and they act as the instructors as well. So those dates usually come out early January. So you can find that on our website. You can just keep checking back and forth, but that'll be updated here. And then if you do the levels 1 through 3, you are eligible to pursue the Certified Secondary Food Service Educator certification. The Summer Institutes and the CSFE are not specific to ProStart. So although we do have mostly ProStart educators in attendance, anyone that works with high school students in this subject is welcome to attend these sessions. So we use the Foundations of Restaurant Management and Culinary Arts textbooks as the foundation for the sessions and the curriculum that it's used along with, but it is open to everyone. So this certification is valid for 5 years. These are just the requirements, an associate's degree, I mean, I'm sure that you guys have that, but along with passing the final exam for level 1, 2, and 3, and having 120 hours of industry experience. So I think we caught up a bit. Any questions about ProStart, about the COA, website, anything that strikes your fancy?
Any questions here? No? Good? All right. Crystal, thank you so much. This was wonderful, huge, huge help. We really appreciate it. So I guess that is it. No questions? Oh, wait, I'm sorry, one question. Yep. No, students don't need to pay to register. Students don't need to take register.
Oh, no, no, okay. Not at all.
Right. Any other questions? No? All right. Crystal, you are free to go.
Okay. Sorry about the webinar technical difficulties.
No, my fault. My fault. I warned them that I was not technically that great. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. And we'll stay in touch. All right. Thank you.
You guys have a great day. Bye.
Okay, you too. Bye. All right.